it harms people.
How do you see AI playing a role in all of this in the coming years?
So I'm excited about AI. I also, have no idea where it's going to take us. There are certain things about it that, when I was in school, when I took AI courses, we didn't talk about machine learning. We didn't talk about deep learning. We talked about like common sense reasoning. We talked about logic. And so again, going back to like scale, a lot of what we see today is because of the scale of data,
right?
That is available. I was playing with GPT-3, with my son the other day, and he put his homework in there, and he's like, write a book report for this book, and it wasn't bad. And then he put in some word problems in math, and it got at least one of them right. I asked it to write an academic bio for myself because I hate writing bios. It made me sound better than I was. It also made a mistake, said I went to Berkeley when I didn't go to Berkeley. Somebody in our department asked it, this is this time of year where we write lots of recommendation letters for students. Right. And so he says, write me a letter of recommendation for a student who got an A in my class, but who I don't remember. And he wrote a pretty good letter. It wasn't bad. And so 10 years ago, I would not, we all talked about stuff like this. We've all seen 2001. But actually playing with it, I have different thoughts than I imagined I would have. My first thoughts playing with it were like, wow, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to train GPT-3. What is the carbon footprint of it? I didn't think I would be thinking about that 10 years ago. But that's something I think about now. Do I need, what problems is this going to solve? Do I need it at the expense of this carbon
computational power?
Yeah. And so I've been thinking a lot about these, going back macro. I'm curious about what types of metrics we use to show the values that we care about in society. You mentioned earlier, advertising and shareholders. We often use GDP as a measure, but GDP is additive, right? You can't take something away from it. And so we don't have, GDP doesn't capture the damage we do from, using these technologies. And so I would like to see a metric that captures that in a reasonably good way. No metric is perfect, and there's many arguments for why for having enough metrics and maybe not needing any more. But I am excited about AI, especially in some of the medical applications that I see. I'm excited that people care about bias, are investigating, possible side effects of bias in AI algorithms. I think it's important for us to keep being critical of it as we develop it. And I also think it's going to be hard to stop some things from being developed. Sometimes there's just this momentum. And like you said, it's happening so much faster than regulators can manage it. I forget what the average age of Congress was, but it was not 20.
It's not 50 either.
Yeah. And, some of the work that I've seen in health and AI, seems really, really promising. The work that I've seen in speech recognition, has been fascinating. Especially when I see some of these tools helping people that, helping people communicate when they couldn't before. So I'm optimistic, but I also think it's very, very important that we protect people in the process and that people have certain rights. So I'm really excited by some of the work Alondra Nelson is doing in the government. She's the head of OSTP, and she's trying to get together a Bill of Rights that people have around AI, similar to the way we have a Bill of Rights, in the Constitution to what we're entitled to. She wants to put out a Bill of Rights for what we're entitled to when AI is in our lives. And I think that's something that that if we can do correctly, and I hope that people, jump on board, will help us think about what we need to, not lose some of our agency and power. Especially around like the data being collected around us all the time. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean when, our DNA gets collected? What is it like, especially during COVID, so many
saliva tests and
and like HIPAA was violated left and right. And sometimes the argument for that was that it's an emergency. It's okay to ignore HIPAA for this. But lots of, we've seen lots of mistakes being made. And some companies had record-breaking fines for violating some of these rules and for making mistakes. But one of the things that I do know that the mistakes are not going to stop happening. And so we need to have, some path in place to figure out what to do when a mistake is made, because they are going to keep happening, and how to learn from it and make sure it doesn't happen again. Like, whenever you do anything new, the unexpected is going to happen. But I also know that people are very adaptable. And I do think that people are going to find also new ways to communicate. It's going to be interesting to see how communication evolves, right? Like, historically, we communicated with real people. So it's one thing I wonder about and sometimes worry about.
Right.
Like you mentioned the Turing test earlier too. I think that, in this world of AI, we're going to be having, discussions about, what does a Turing test even mean anymore? And what does it tell us? And is that even, something meaningful that we need to worry about? But I am optimistic about AI. And I've seen cases where it's been super helpful. And I'm trying to make a list of places where it's been helpful, because in the news you often hear about, the not so great cases around it. And I'm wondering if it can be used in ways that I haven't even thought about yet. And I'm sure it will be.